Okay, we're back, and this time we are looking at that 70's expansion. So we'll just jump straight into it as we always do. So first we've got the first seed for the Disco Dancers of Last Dance against Stoneford of the Vigilantes. Now for me, the Vigilantes were a really tricky one to decide the seedings for, because if you ask me on any given day, there's probably a different Vigilante minion in at first and second seed for me. So like one day Dusty Henry might be the ideal minion, and another day it's Foxy Green, and it might be Stoneford. So I struggled really to identify a good or the best sort of vigilante card that wasn't an action. I put Let's Finish This Through as well, but for the actual minion that I was looking at, they're all good in their own way. So it was very difficult to actually put forward a very solid. There was no standout, I suppose, in terms, certainly from the minion perspective, there was no standout. They're all pretty on a very similar power level, and I suppose that's good design. And none of them are, they're all fat power four, and none of them are better than any of the others really. Maybe Brojack and Jackie Bill might be the weakest ones for me, but I'd put Stoneford in at my third seed, I think, actually, and I had it in my all-star faction as well, because it's a very solid four-power pick, and we've seen in a lot of these discussions how good actions can be, and we've got an action up against Stoneford right now, and the fact that you can search your deck for any action and draw it immediately, place it straight into your hand is great, because whatever the situation is, and as long as you've got an answer in your deck, which is an action, Stoneford can draw you the answer to that situation. So that power, that tutoring power that Stoneford has to pick out the exact card is the reason I put it through, and it's general enough where any faction could drop in a Stoneford at the power four slot, and you'd appreciate that ability. It is a one-time use thing, so once it's in play, there's no ongoing value. It's just a power four. But for me in this matchup, I'm a big fan of any card that says gain and 1 VP on the card. So for me, it's Last Dance, and just because it's a very, very strong card in Disco Dancers, it can be worth the equivalent of a base, breaking your base solo, just with your Divas and your Dancing King and the play and minion action that they've got that can copy it as well. We Are Family, I think it's what it's called. But it can be worth 3, 4, 5 VP if you really want it to be, and that could be enough to see the game out for you. And even in its most vanilla state, okay, everyone can get a VP if they want a VP, but the thing is, you don't play this card just to give everyone a VP. You play this card when you're on 14 VP, and you play it just to win the game. So for me, it's Last Dance, because any card that gives you the potential to gain VP outside of bases is a very, very solid card in my book. So I'd put it for Last Dance.
Yeah, interesting. Very interesting. I'll go next if you don't mind, Lee.
Is that so you can say Stoneford?
Yes, it is, and I like Last Dance, and I think we do get very attracted to any cards that say gain a VP. But I've played Disco Dancers a good few times, and they suffer from being a bit too complicated. Every time you look up any rules on, if you go on Smash Up Wiki or anything, it all says, how does it interact with Disco Dancers? How all
Funky
the frequently
Town.
asked questions are how it interacts with Disco Dancers, and they suffer from that. And I think they have that dreamer scenario of gaining 5 victory points from a single action, but it just doesn't happen to any sort of consistency. You've got to line up all your minions, have them all out at the right time, play it at the right time, and get this big play. But I just don't think, I think it's too specific, and it needs too many parts to be worth it. You then basically destroying, let's say you're destroying 3, 4, 5 minions for 5 VP. Okay, it's worth it, but 5 minions should be able to break your base and win you a base probably for 4 VP or maybe even 5 VP. So I don't think that trade-off is worth it. Plus everyone can gain at least 1 VP back on you. So even if you gain 5, they're gaining 1. That's a best case scenario, and you've got to use a lot of resources to do that. Stoneford is just about as solid as it gets as a card. There are 4 power minions that have worse talents. Okay, yeah, once it's down, it's down, but the strength of some of the actions in this game to be able to get whichever one you need, pull it right out there and get it in your hand is absolutely massive. You can suffer from, if you get this card too late, not essentially being able to use it, him being a bit of a dead card as such. But if you pull him early, you can really go and get the action card that makes your deck work. We've talked about how strong some of the actions in the game are. And if you think back to the ones that have won any of these tournaments, to be able to get that straight in your hand and use it as many times as possible is absolutely huge. So I think Stoneford.
Interesting. I think Mark did too good of a job talking Stoneford up to me really early on, and Luke's just solidified my pick for me. I think Stoneford is probably with the way I'm leaning as well, simply because of the consistency with it. I completely agree that the idea of being able to search out the answer. And often I think that whenever you look at any of the Vigilantes cards, I felt like the answer was always there. My issue with them is that you don't always necessarily have that. But with Stoneford, I think you get to mitigate that a little bit because you're able to sort of draw into the sort of thing that you're looking for. But like you say, particularly, there's no way that you're destroying 5 minions. You don't want. You're never going to be destroying 5 minions because the 5 minions that you've got there should be strong enough to be able to help you at least break that base without that capability. That said, maybe there is a scenario where that's going to happen, but I think you're more likely to be able to get more use out of Stoneford than you are out of Last Dance. But yeah, I agree. It's tempting to lean towards the VP. It is very tempting to
It's a honey trap for me.
It is, yeah, and that's. I mean, I'm sure there's a body shot trap floating around the corner somewhere as well. But yeah, and fair play because I can see the benefit of wanting to do that, and I was already thinking about ways that you could use being able to give away control of minions or getting control of other
Kitty
minions.
cats.
Kitty cats would be a nice little
Dance.
combo. Yeah, Kitty Cat's Last Dance would be a nice little combo. But again, you've got to wait for it and build up to it, and it relies on other minions being there and the base not being broken at the right time and you being able to take control when you need to. And there's just a bit too much playing up to that. And I think Luke said is very fair. Sometimes I feel like they're just a bit too complicated, and I get the idea that that's not a bad thing, especially if you know how to play them. But if you're playing with a group of mates on a casual game, you don't want to be reaching for the rule book. You want to just be enjoying the game because that's what this is all about. So I sort of half, and I'm tempted for both, but I think I'm leaning towards Stoneford just because of consistency's sake.
I mean, Stoneford's certainly it's certainly a very simple and straightforward card, and I think that's where its strength lies. I disagree in terms of I think we've seen better 4-power minions. I mean, even Solar Shout was one of these, and that was a 4-power Archmage, wasn't it? And we've seen other 4-power minions. Wyvern as well was another good one. I think we've seen better 4-power minions, but we've talked about. I mentioned on the
6, isn't he?
No, that's Leader 2.
Leader 2.
Yeah.
Is
we
there
mentioned on.
Is there an action that lets you search out an action and put it in your hand? Does this exist in action form?
Yeah, no, there's actions that let you search, not necessarily a specific action. So there's actions that let you search for actions off the top of the deck. So fetch
is there anything that you can literally go and get any action you want out of the deck?
I don't think there's a specific. Well, there's cards that let you search for another card. So
yeah.
Rumpelstiltskin for Grimm's Fairy Tales lets you put any card on top of the deck. So you'll obviously draw into it. So it's a similar sort of effect, but I don't think there's another replicable effect like Stoneford. But I mentioned it with Full Sail in the first in the core set one, is that Full Sail and Last Dance should be the very last card that you play in the game. Like Last Dance will be the last card you play and you've won the game at that point. Same with Full Sail. Yeah, so I do agree in terms of there is a lot of setup to create the ideal perfect situation for Last Dance.
There's also a scenario there based on what you just said there where you don't play Last Dance at all.
I think you'll always play it. I think you will always play it every game. There's always going to be an opportunity to get one more VP than other players will get.
Yeah, maybe. But holding it on to the very end, it's risky at that point, isn't it? You don't want to destroy a minion to get one VP to lose the base or to come second on the base accidentally because the special's overtaking you or something. I just think it's more of the risky play. Again, more dreamy.
So battle of the King minions here. Who wants to kick us off on this one? Go on, Lee. You talk about truckers a lot.
Yeah, I do like probably one of my favorite combos in the game is Truckers Killer Plants, and I like to play it just so you can keep moving overgrowth around. So, I guess naturally I should probably lean towards El Bandito because it essentially allows you to take the card that will it allows you to perform the combo that will essentially win you the game by choking a sort of breakpoint down to 0 on your next turn, and then allowing you to basically have anything on that base in order to be able to break it, and then being able to move the action before the brace officially breaks. So it's able to so you can be the only person there ultimately which is going to be able to benefit from the base break, and it's a way of being able to completely break a base with 1 or 2 card investments or without losing really anything in the process. And I think it's a fantastic combination, incredibly powerful card combination. So El Bandito is fantastic, but outside of that, I've never really found a use that made me particularly excited to want to play him. And I think that's what the truckers kind of suffer from, is that they do an awful lot, but they don't really achieve a great deal. And that's what I often find whenever I play the truckers. On the other side of the coin, we've got the Dragon Warrior from the Kung Fu Fighters. Again, I often think the Kung Fu Fighters sound better than they play, and I get this feeling with the ants as well, the giant ants. It's always about these power counters. You've got to keep putting these power counters down in various different places. I know Luke really likes that play style, but it's never really suited me. I've always been more about chaining cards in one big down play than being able to sort of build up to one massive slam play at some point by being able to body shop your Dragon Warrior, for example. So I'm kind of torn with these two. I lean more towards El Bandito purely because of the Killer Plants playstyle. But I think genuinely the better card in this example is probably Dragon Warrior, simply because he can't be destroyed and because he's allowed a very impressive talent. And if you pair him with the right faction, he's devastating.
So did you end up on Dragon Warrior there? Or?
I feel like I'm on Dragon Warrior. I feel like I am, but I could be convinced either way. I'm almost not really saying anything yet. I just kind of want to. I've given you my pros and cons of both, and I'll wait to see what way I'm swayed. I think both are sort of the good cards. And I was saying before actually that it is nice to see some powerful king minions, some king minions that I'd actually quite like to play with. We've done a couple of sets recently where the king minions there's been one standout king minion, and the rest have been pretty mediocre at best. But these guys are better, and it is quite nice that they are a little bit better. I'm a little bit more excited to play these. I think, again, when I say better, I feel like they synergize better in terms of an overall faction. Like Dragon Warriors pick up and put down in basically any faction and it would work, as long as there's some power counters being generated somewhere. El Bandito, again, sort of pick up and put down in any faction as long as there's some base actions within that faction. So I just feel like they're a little bit more transferable than some of the ones that we've seen recently. But that I'm probably leaning more towards Dragon Warrior than I am El Bandito. Probably.
I've got a strong feeling either way. If you're happy for me to go next, Mark?
You've got a strong feeling, have you?
Yeah, I think you know who I'm picking.
Go on then.
I'm picking Dragon Warrior. So I do, like Lee said, I love playing cards with extra power counters and growing power and building something and chaining things and doing all those kind of plays. And I do like to try and create this unstoppable monster that essentially wins the game, or there's not a lot you can do about it, and you've got this 10, 20 power minion as much as you can get it. Now, for me, I play a lot of factions with power counters, Mad Scientist probably being my favorite, but they do suffer from generally not having much draw or ways to really keep them going. So it's very easy to put giant ants and Mad Scientists together, or Kung Fu Fighters, those 4 factions that have a lot of power counters, and just go, okay, well, they all have power counters, so I'll mash them together. But it doesn't really work because you end up not being able to do very much. You end up having 1 or 2 or 3 power counters out, and you've got no real way to gain traction. So they work best when you pair them with something that can really move them forward. You have extra minion plays, extra action plays, stuff to get things out, and that's when they're best. So what Dragon Warrior allows you to do is bring the power together at the right time. So you can use the Kung Fu Fighters to generate your power, and you can be very efficient with it. So you could go, okay, well, I need 1 more to bait the brace. I'll move that 1 to there, or, this guy's I'm 2 away, I'll move this over. So, and he facilitates that, and you can't really get rid of him other than picking him up or scoring the base. So you can almost strand him where you want. And if you don't need those extra 2 power counters because you're already breaking the base, you just nick them off and move them about. And it allows you to be very efficient. And if you do manage to pair it with something that can really ramp up the power counters, he adds a lot of value because you never overspend. You keep in every power counter that you don't need. You've already lost the base, you just move all your power counters off, you save them for another day. It's like being able to so specifically move the power. It's fantastic. I do like El Bandito. I think he is, like we've seen with a lot of King minions, he is the engine that makes the faction work. But I just don't think base actions are really as good as they should be unless you really commit to them. It's kind of like the power counters thing. If you just chuck him in with something that's got loads of base actions, you end up just with loads of base actions down and not necessarily gaining from that.
I completely agree with that statement, apart from maybe 1 or 2 factions that are essentially built around having amazing, but
yeah,
again, it's the same problem that I've seen a few of these King minions suffer from, where exactly like you've just said, Luke, there's some factions that would really benefit from additional base action plays or additional movement on base actions and that sort of stuff, but outside of maybe 2 factions that are off the top of my head that I could think of, there's very little in the way of good base actions that you get from the player. Sorry, look, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's fine. I agree.
I agree with El Bandido in that there's a core group of factions. So steampunks, tricksters, truckers, kaiju, incas. I can't remember what else. There's like a small core group of factions that play lots of play on base actions, and El Bandido being able to take control of one of those actions is really, really strong. But most factions in the game either don't have any play on base actions or they've got like 1 or 2. And El Bandido against those factions, in terms of its play, a play on effect is pretty low value because you won't take anything, or you'll take something that's not really that great. So the talent, I don't know about you guys, but you only ever really use the talent to play an extra action on the base, because truckers have loads of ways of transferring actions or cards from one base to another anyway, so you very rarely have to do that with El Bandido. So really, it's just a slightly better version of, we talked about Senor Mucho Slam last time, or the time before, and his talent's play an extra play on minion action, well, play an extra action on base. It's a very similar sort of talent, so you get a lot of value from your own faction, but there aren't many pairings where you can get a lot of great value from that as well. So I think El Bandido does struggle from that, whereas Dragon Warrior, the fact that it can't be destroyed is really almost surplus to requirements, because it's very unlikely to be able to be destroyed anyway. It's almost the fact that is almost more of a benefit for your partner factions, as you said there, with like Body Shop or something. You can actually use it as a target for those sort of effects, because it's unlikely to be able to be destroyed by your opponent's minions anyway. And I think the talent.
Now we're talking.
The talent is obviously amazing, and I mean, you mentioned it there, Luke. Dragon Warrior can actually act as like a pivot for the power counters. You move it off your opponents onto Dragon Warrior, and then from Dragon Warrior onto somewhere else when you're ready to move them to a certain place. So it can act as a really good sort of pivot minion for them as well. And there's actually one really solid counter to Dragon Warrior, because Dragon Warrior is obviously the fact that it can move power counters not just from your own minions, which is great, but the fact that it can move them from anywhere makes it a really solid counter to, giant ants, mad scientists, any of those factions that love power counters. But the counter to Dragon Warrior is just simply putting 5 +1 power counters onto one minion and changing those +1 power counters to 1 +5 power counter. And Dragon Warrior can't move it, because it can only move +1 power counters. It can't move +5 power counters.
Ah, yeah. Okay.
Is that a real thing?
No, I've just completely made that up.
I was like, if that is true,
it says on it can only move +1s. It can't move +5s. So.
Oh dear.
Anyway, I think I'm going with Dragon Warrior, just because I mean, of the 2 factions, in fairness, I haven't played truckers as much as I have played Kung Fu Fighters, but I've certainly preferred Kung Fu Fighters, and a big part of that has been Dragon Warrior. So I think for me it's Dragon Warrior. Just even the fact that we talked about Eliza last time being like a 1-card counter. Dragon Warrior is like a 1-card counter to giant ants, mad scientists, other +1 power counter factions.
Vampires,
yeah. I mean, they need a counter, really, don't they?
They
do,
counter
they-
themselves. They counter themselves. Oh, because they suck. Vampires suck.
I get you. I get you.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right up on the other side. So we've got Rally and Dancing King.
I mean, this is a pretty easy one for me.
Yeah, it's a pretty easy one for me as well.
It's Rally,
Luke,
right?
is it Luke? Is this
Everyone say
as well
Rally,
for
yeah.
you, Luke? Rally, yeah. Everyone for
Yeah.
Rally.
Yeah. Everyone for
I
Rally.
don't really know. I don't particularly love either of these cards. Are you two on the same page?
Oh,
I
definitely
think I'm
Dancing
on.
King.
Yeah, I would say Dancing King, but Rally is very, very. It's a very,
Right,
very
okay.
strong card.
Agree. It's good. Yeah, but it's got to be Dancing King. Any card that
Yeah.
lets me play King Rex twice. I'm sorry, I'm all over that.
How does it let you play? Talk me through the King Rex play again.
Go on, Mark.
I can't remember what the name of the card is, isn't it? But you can. It lets you bring back a
We
minion.
we were saying Staying Alive.
Is it Staying Alive? Maybe I can't remember what it was.
might be
Yeah,
Staying Alive.
But you can let's after a base scores, isn't it? You can return one of your minions to hand, and Dancing King can target another one, so you can return.
Right, so it gets
multiple
both them back
minions.
out.
Yeah, you can return multiple minions with that effect.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't really have an affinity to either of these cards. My only criticism really with Dancing King is the rule issue where you're constantly going in the rule book, but I'm happy to go with Dancing King.
Yeah, so with Dancing King on a base, you play King Rex on the next turn, and then you play Staying Alive while the base is breaking. So, it's I Will Survive. I Will Survive.
I will survive.
You play I Will Survive, which when the base is broken, instead of going to the discard pile, they go straight back to your hand to be played on the next one. And then I believe you get an action which allows you to bring out another action from the discard pile. So there's a potential. There is a scenario.
It lets you bring up a minion. Brings back.
Is it a minion?
Yeah.
Okay, a minion. Oh, my bad. I was going to say there could be a scenario somehow. There
Oh,
could
no,
be a mysterious
you can
scenario.
play. You can play Disco Lou,
Disco
isn't it?
Lou.
You can bring back an action from the
Bring
discard
back an
pile.
action. So there is a scenario where perhaps in 4 turns you've been able to play Dancing King Rex every time, every turn, or at least one a turn every turn. Any card that lets you play multiple King Rexes is a card that wins, in my opinion. So Dancing King gets it for me.
Looking at that text, does it look blurry around the outside to you?
It does, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. It looks all right in the middle, but around the outside it looks a bit blurry. I don't know what's up with that. Just my camera quality, maybe.
It might be the disco lights.
Optical illusion, yeah, an optical illusion with the disco lights.
Yeah, I mean, are you not convinced either way, Luke? Or
I'm not bothered for them. It's I don't really like either, but I don't hate either. I don't know. I've not really been this way about them. I've not had an affinity for either of the cards really.
Normally, you're strongly passionate one way, yeah.
Dancing King's got more crazy combinations. But
Rally is certainly one of the strongest before a base scores cards. There's not many cards in the game that can let you feasibly have 10 plus power before a base scores. I think there's the one we looked at it for the Cthulhu set. I can't remember, it might have been an Elder Thing card where you can look at madness cards from hands and get +2 for each card. Price of power or something. I can't remember what it was, but that can get you the same sort of level of power as Rally can, but without any of the downside of madness or anything like that. So
for me, Rally requires you to have a significant number of actions. On the base,
there's a bit of a setup for Rally, but truckers are doing that anyway, though. So I mean, it's not like they're doing it against their sort of game plan. But
still, though, I feel like Rally works better in a 2-player game because you would likely be focusing one base where you've been able to plow down a lot more base actions. Across a 4-player game, you might have spread those actions around a little bit just so that you got a bit more a bit more option in terms of where you're going to play. Whereas Dancing King, I think, allows you to do more with less, and that's why I think Dancing King's better. Plus, all right, fair enough. I'm dreaming of the King Rex scenario where you playing and getting multiple King Rexes back, and who wouldn't love that? But at least you could essentially passively use Dancing King's talent. And I think you were saying before, Mark, it's not the criteria that's necessary for using the action that's in play. So destroying a power 3 for reference doesn't necessarily need to be a power 3 for it to be destroyed, doesn't it? It's able to just destroy something else because that's the criteria that it copies.
Yeah, the trade-off for Rally isn't great. If you playing it on a base to get 10 power, you're also losing 5 on base actions. So you're losing quite a lot of assets to get the bump in power because the base is going to disappear. So
Well, rally is better for those factions that don't have play on base actions that can give you power, because truckers have the power 4 minion. I think it's called Rubber Chicken, and which is basically a Kaijuki, because it's power 4 +1 power for each action on the base, and they've got, I think, Convoy, which gives them +1 power for each action on the base, including that one. So if you've got a whole lot of actions on a base, and you've got like a Rubber Chicken there, and you've got maybe 1 or 2 Convoy there, rally is just like completely unnecessary. You're not going to use rally on that base because you're probably already winning there. But then all your actions have gone. So when you come to use rally, you may only have like 1 play on base action left or 2 play on base actions left. So it's almost like it's a great card, but it's a really unnecessary card in truckers.
yeah, I agree.
Are we saying Dancing King?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's lots more to come from Dancing King. Lots more to come.
Easy choice for me.
And we've got 9 minutes to finish this last pairing off.
One might say that was expertly timed.
Let's finish this. This is a tricky one. It's enough on like the last round with you, Luke. I don't really have any kind of preference one way or the other on this. I think this is the same for me for lots of these, in that the 70s expansion is a set that I don't really have a lot of strong connections to. It's just I quite like them all, and I quite dislike them all in equal measure, really.
My only real love is Truckers, but only because I love Killer Plants so much, and Truckers Killer Plants just synergize exceptionally well. But I don't really care about the Truckers cards.
Well, you've got the same combo. You've got the same combo here, though. If Let's Finish This Trucker, Trucker and move. Let's finish this round.
Yeah. Yeah, the same sort of scenario. Yeah. That's why I like. Yeah, I think Let's Finish This is what I prefer out of this scenario. It's simply because of it lets you play off the sort of thing that I'm talking about, where you're able to put something down. But the only thing I don't like about Let's Finish This compared to, I can't remember what it's called. Is it Choking Vines? It's the
one that's there's Overgrowth.
Overgrowth. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, is it Overgrowth?
It's Overgrowth. No, it's Overgrowth for Killer Plants. Overrun is zombies, but there's also the werewolf one that we've talked about, marking territory, which is a similar sort of effect to this one as well.
I think ultimately the most powerful one is the Overgrowth, the one from the Killer Plants, because that doesn't have any other conditions other than just getting back to your turn. Whereas this requires you to have your card and then somebody else's card on this base at the end of that turn, or at the start of your next turn, to be able to break it. But yeah, I'd probably go with Let's Finish This over Expert Timing, just because I think it's the more fun card out of the two. Again, though, I don't really have an affinity either way, so by all means, convince me.
Well, if you guys are both neutral, I'll go here because I've got a downside to one and an upside to the other. So
go on then, Luke.
I think Let's Finish This is one of the worst of the base breaking on your next turn sort of cards. Marking Territory, you have to have the most power. Overgrowth is just on your next turn. So they're both manipulable a bit more by you. This is kind of the scenarios where you play a minion down, someone else plays a minion on it, and you play it, and they can just move off. They can move away and just go, oh, well, then you're stranded there. Your opponent has too much control over Let's Finish This. I think if you put it on a base where there's loads of minions, it's quite difficult to deal with. But the idea is you want to get that base down to 0 and be really efficient with how you break it. You don't want to put it on a base where there's loads of resources on there. You want to break it with 1 minion for a cheap win. Okay, yeah, you do have a right to reply because it will finish on your turn. But you give them 1 turn to either go, okay, well, I'll just move off, or I'll pick back up, or I'll move yours off, or I'll destroy whatever, and potentially leave you putting a minion down on a redundant base. The other side is they might chain a load and make it quite hard for you to come back with. Vigilantes don't really have that many extra minion plays. So there's a scenario where they could just overrun you, and then it comes back to your turn and it's breaking because they don't have that burst, I don't think. So I don't think Let's Finish This is the best of all of them. I don't think Marking Territory made it near the final, but I think that is better. I think Overgrowth is better. I think your opponent has too much control over it. Now, expert timing, I do really like, because not only does it have that transferability, which you see within the Kung Fu Fighters, which works really well, it also lets you use a talent for another time. And some of the talents in this game are absolutely fantastic. And it allows you to do it before the base is breaking as a special. So, I mean, what are some of the best talents in the game?
Well, it's not just talents on minions as well. It's talents on other cards. So, for instance, like if you're playing in werewolves, or even just Solar Shout from Changer Box or something, and if a talent could let you play an extra action, which could then let you do another effect.
I just think talents are really strong, and you always want your talents out there. Being able to play an additional one and being able to do it in the base scores is just a really strong card. There's a lot going on in that card. It gives you a lot of options. Even if you ignore them moving the power counters, which works really well in the Kung Fu Fighters, the other bits being able to use as well as and as a special can be really strong. So I think expert timing is actually considerably better. I agree that Let's Finish This is unique, because there's only really 3 cards that we can think of that do that sort of thing, where you drop in the base breaking point entirely. But I think expert timing is more useful, because your opponents have too much control over Let's Finish This, and expert timing can do a lot of things, even if you cherry pick which bits you want to do. I think it's better.
It's an interesting one. I don't think Let's Finish This is the worst of the 3. I think Marking Territory is the worst of the 3 of them. I think that's more.
Why do you think that?
I think that's more controllable by other players, because you have to have the most power on the base at the start of your turn, but that can just lead to a rush to deny you that. You can always be denied that effect, whereas Let's Finish This, I think, is more in your control than Marking Territory is. And I think I like expert timing, but I can't underestimate the power of dropping a base to 0. Like, that's so good for very few resources, and Vigilantes are very efficient in their plays, in that every minion you drop is a powerful minion. So you're either going to get a very efficient second place, or you'll get a decent first place for a couple of minions with this card. So
sold again.
I mean, I get expert time, and I do completely agree. And the transfer of any number of +1 power counters from one card to another, in Giant Ants, we've seen that their 1-2 combo, where you power all the power counters onto one minion, and then you transfer them before and after the base scores, and that's incredibly strong. And expert timing lets you do that and another talent. And Kung Fu Fighters have some great talents for doing that. Particularly Lady Whirlwind is a great talent to use before a base scores, because you can potentially swing power even further with this card. So for me, this is a coin toss. This is like as close to a coin toss as you can possibly get, because I think they're both very good cards, and I couldn't. I'm going to need you to decide this, Lee, because I can't come down one way or the other on this.
Oh, that's not helpful. My gut says Let's Finish This, simply because I like the ability to, like Mark said, I like the ability to be able to reduce the breakpoint to 0, and I've played that strat, and it plays into my strats. But that's not discounting the fact that Luke's argument for expert timing was very strong as well, because at the end of the day, the transfer of the power counters is what makes it good. But like you said, uniquely, Let's Finish This is probably a bit more unique than the expert timing, in so much as transfer +1 power counters is not exactly a unique skill. Again, that said, all of them in one go is pretty unique, I suppose, in terms of how it works. Honestly, I'm kind of torn with either. I'm struggling because I don't think either of them really beat Dancing King for me. So I don't really mind how far whichever one of these wins goes, because to me, Dancing King's the better card.
Well, what's fun is if you do pick Let's Finish This, Mark has to decide, because then you pick Let's Finish This and I picked expert timing.
Sold. I'm going to pick Let's Finish This then. I said Let's Finish This first. I'm going to go with my gut.
You got the classic Dragon Warrior play, Luke, where you use expert timing to transfer all your power counters from Dragon Warrior to another minion. Then you can use the talent of Dragon Warrior to move all the power counters back from that minion to Dragon Warrior. and you've effectively just wasted expert timing for absolutely no reason whatsoever. I honestly, I can't decide. But when I first looked at them, it was going to be let's finish this, just because the power of the potential swing factor of that play is so big. Whereas expert timing is basically, we've seen the first part of the effect obviously in Dragon Warrior. The talent and extra time is great, especially before a base scores, and it's very strong. But I think just being able to drop a base to 0, any faction that can do that is has a big ace up their sleeve. So I think I'll probably go let's finish this. And for the sake of time, we've got less than
something about timing.
It cut off just before you said it. You were 2 words away.
I know. It was unbelievable timing from Zoom there. I think I was concluding on let's finish this as my pick, I think, on this one. It was very, very tough though. This is
was it
probably
tough?
the toughest.
Was it really tough?
I think this is the hardest of the first round pairings for me. And I think just the unique ability of let's finish this, and the fact that can be very, very strong, especially in the right matchups. But credit to expert timing.
Credit to Zoom.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm not sad about that. They're both all right.
Yeah,
and that's it, isn't it? They're both all right. They're both all right.
Yeah, 70 expansion to me, I think this has probably been the most interesting one we've done so far. I'd say it's been tough. Everything seems to be fairly similarly powered.
Just saying to Luke, I like to argue a little bit more, but there's nothing I can really jump behind on this, so there's nothing I can really passionately argue for.
Yeah, like going in, you might have like your classic favorite, like Invader or Eliza for me, or something like that. But I've just got no strong thing that I like to do with any of these. Really, it's just they're all good and all bad in their own way for me. There's nothing really that stands out. So we're up in the next round. So we've got Stoneford and Dragon Warrior. And do we think Stoneford's gone as far as it can go?
Yes.
I don't know. This is hard.
I again, but it's not hard in a I want both to win kind of way. It's hard in a kind of they're okay cards. They're both okay cards. I feel like Dragon Warrior is a slightly better one, mostly because it can't be destroyed. So you get to maintain that power on there, and its talent I think is better purely because it's a talent and because it can't be destroyed. The fact that it's reusable, I think, gives Dragon Warrior the edge. That said, Stoneford allows you to find any action, and as we all know, you can search out terraforming.
Yeah, search for terraforming, very strong, and play it on the same turn.
I was going to say, you've drawn it, you put it down, you play a minion, you bring out terraforming because it goes back in your deck, doesn't it, rather than discard? So,
I think for me, it goes to Dragon Warrior. I don't know. Did you say Dragon Warrior then, Leo? Did you?
I did. I said Dragon Warrior. I did.
I think,
what do you want to say, Luke? What do you want to say before Mark makes his final decision?
I think I don't know. Yeah. The thing for me with Stoneford is it's so dependent on how good the action you're pulling out is. And I know that seems obvious, but if you're pairing it seems like such a weird combination to go Vigilantes and Aliens just so that you can pull out terraforming. But you can do that. Nobody's stopping you from doing that. But it just doesn't feel like a combo that you'd select, really. So
Time Travelers for Time Walk twice.
Yeah, but would you pick Vigilante? You see what I mean? Like, some of the best cards in the game.
You pick Time Travelers, you go Stoneford for Do-Over. You play Do-Over to pick up Stoneford, and you play down Stoneford for your second copy of Do-Over and do it all over again next turn. Thin your deck out, that's what it does. Thins your deck.
I think he has... His ceiling is how good the action that you can get out is. Whereas I think Dragon Warrior does more for his faction. I think once again, he's the engine that makes the combination work. With Kung Fu Fighters, you're getting lots of 1 power counters just added on top, but really consolidating them to find the body shot play where you double up your power and do all the crazy shenanigans. I think that's better. But it's very hard. I do love Stoneford, but I think I'm leaning with you boys on slightly towards Dragon Warrior.
I think yeah, Stoneford is only as good as the actions in your deck, but I think you're always going to have a good pick with Stoneford because you're going to have at least 10 actions in your deck. Every faction's going to have some good actions. Even vampires have some good actions. So there's not really ever going to be a bad pick with Stoneford. So I think it's always going to have value. But I think the issue for me is that the value is all front loaded, and then after that it's just a blank power 4. And I'm a big sucker for not just gaining VP, but for long-term value. And Dragon Warrior gives me that kind of long-term value because the Kung Fu fighters have ways in the faction of generating +1 power counters. So even if you're pairing it with another faction that doesn't have power counters and you're playing against factions that don't use power counters, Dragon Warrior will still get value in the game because of the flexibility of moving power around. So I think for me it's Dragon Warrior, and then the fact that it's immune to destruction is just a fringe benefit on top that isn't really necessary. But it's just because in a game like Smash Up where your resources really matter and you have to be incredibly efficient breaking bases, using power rather than minions to break bases is the best approach to use that, because you want to use your minions elsewhere and break other bases. So Dragon Warrior lets you do a very cheap 1 or 2 minion break, but you can pile a load of power counters up on one side of the board and then transfer them over, and you can break the base very efficiently. So I think Dragon Warrior for me just is the winner here. But Stoneford is certainly a very solid card. And even the time travel example, you mentioned it in the chat, Stoneford for time walk, and you play, you get your 2, draw 2, play an extra action, play an extra minion combo. But for me, it's Dragon Warrior.
3-4.
Yeah, why not?
And it's interesting. I mean, I don't know if you guys, I don't even think you put Stoneford in your top 3, did you, Lee?
I thought I had him at number 1.
I think I had him at 3. I don't think someone had, because I think he went through on a 1 and a 3. I don't think someone had him in.
I put him at 1.
It must have been me that didn't have him in then. But I think I was agreeing with what you were saying before. You asked me on a different day, he'd be my number 1 choice. Asked me the next day, he wouldn't even make the top 3. So
yeah,
it's
they were tricky like that.
It is difficult like that.
They're quite well balanced, actually. They're probably what the superhero should have been. They have a lot. Like that. They've taken the edge off the power to give them better on play actions, and
none of them are king minion. Like none of them could be a king minion. Like in any faction, you wouldn't put them as a power 5 at any faction, but they're all really solid. Power 4. If you're going to have a lot of 1 power of minion, they do that very well. Whereas the superheroes, none of their abilities are. You could easily see the 4 superhero abilities on any of the vigilantes. That's how weak the superhero abilities are. And in fact, they sort of kind of do cross over a fair bit on their abilities. So, yeah, you're dead right.
Citizen.
You'd have Madman a Citizen, Madman a Vigilante or something to get into. Then that would be pretty good. Right. So let's finish this in Dancing King. Do we think Let's Finish This has come as far as it can go?
You are my dancing king.
Again, I don't mind either of these, so I'm happy for you guys to.
I'm torn a little bit because the idea of breaking a base on 0 power is wonderful. I really do like that as a gimmick, but I'm always going to take the multiple King Rex play. And I know that's dreaming. But if I'm playing disco dancers, I'm playing them with dinosaurs, because who doesn't love a disco dancing dinosaur? That's the dream right there. So yeah, for me, it's the double King Rex Dancing King.
And yeah, for me, it's Dancing King as well, just because it has so much utility. It's kind of like I'll just save it. I'll save it for the final. Luca,
I'll need some. Yeah, I'll need some convincing in the final. You might as well save it for then.
Yeah, I'm not going to make.
I'm excited to
Let's finish this.
I'm excited to hear what the answers, what the argument's going to be, because sneak peek. I'm leaning slightly towards Dancing King, slightly, but I could be easily swayed either way on this one, and it would be nice to win one. So
it's a very close final. It's not like some of the finals we've had in the past, and they're both very solid King minions. So it's a very worthy final, I think, really. So is anyone who's leaning what way now then? So Lee, you mentioned you slightly leaning towards Dancing King.
Lightly towards Dancing King.
Luke, are you leaning slightly towards Dragon Warrior, or are you also Dancing King?
Yes.
You're leaning slightly
Yes.
towards Dragon
Probably
Warrior.
more than slightly.
No,
towards
it
Dragon
doesn't look like a
Warrior,
lean to me.
yeah. Probably
Well,
more.
Do you want to go? Do you want to go across then? Do you want to say why you think Dragon Warrior? Do you want to say why you think Dancing King? Lee, and then I'll kind of
Go on, Luke.
make a decision at that point.
So my stance in this final is probably not necessarily strength towards Dragon Warrior. It's more a dislike of Dancing King, and it is powerful. And sorry, that's unfair. I do like it, but my problem with Dancing King and disco dancers, like I have said already, is the complicatedness of it, and I think it's too much. I think it's a nice idea, it's a nice experiment, but it sits in the faction of it sits in the realms of dueling and burying and the gimmicks that are an interesting little experiment, but let's just put them away and not play with them. It's overly complicated, it's overly engineered. It's okay, fine, if you really want to get really into this and think of all the combinations and the chaining and things like that, but the fact that all the rules and the frequently asked questions are about how it impacts this faction, disco dancers, how does this work with disco, how does it I'd just probably rather go, okay, let's just keep them out, let's just not bother, let's just leave it. And that's not what I like. I don't want to have to. One of the dynamics of our group is I will make a play or somebody will make a play, and there'll be an element of, are you allowed to do that? Is that within the rules? That feels odd. That feels too good. That feels too strong. And turning around and going, yeah, it's in the rules, doesn't make anyone feel any better. I'm probably referring specifically as when I use Body Shop to destroy something that can't be destroyed, but that does exist where you're trying to defend something that is within the rules but doesn't really feel correct. It doesn't really feel right. And I think that exists a lot within disco dancers. But Dragon Warrior is strong on its own. It allows you to consolidate power. It allows you to, the bit that I actually missed off in my first point, which Mark brought up, is steal power counters from your opponent, which is unbelievable as a dynamic of a card, to be able to take somebody else's power counters off them. It nullifies certain power counter factions that, as a counter pick against Mad Scientists or the Giant Ants, it can absolutely wreck them every time they play a power counter. Just nick it, and it's a 2 power swing for every power counter. So I think it's very unique in what it allows you to do, and the destruction is almost a bit irrelevant. But I think Dragon Warrior for me, and it's not to say Dancing King isn't strong, it's just doesn't create the game state I like to play in, where you're all having a good time, you know the rules, you're thinking of different ways, and it just doesn't help the game for me.
I think just before Lee comes in, I think disco dancers are one of the few factions where they've had to use like fully formed examples in the rulebook to actually explain how the interactions work. I can't think of any other faction where they've had to put in detailed examples of specific cards being on bases and what happens when you play this card and who gets affected, Diva and Dancing King and all that sort of stuff. That kind of sums up how complicated disco dancers actually are in terms of some of their interactions and mechanics, and I think that's the first time they've ever had to really do that in the game. So just kind of summarize on your point there, I think you're right in terms of the complexity. Go on, Lee.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And to a certain extent, in a casual game, that's kind of not what you want. And I do agree with what Luke's saying. And there has been a couple of times where even amongst us, where we've just gone, hang on a minute, what players just happened there? And even we need to clarify every now and again. So I kind of do accept that, and I again had negated to accept that you could take power counters from other people. So I mean, you've done a good job talking, Luke. There's a chance that I could be swinging around, but
Is
then
Luke
I
going to get
start
his
thinking
first
about.
win?
Then I start thinking about double King Rex, and I get really excited. So I don't know. I am torn. I am torn. I think again, both are worthy winners. Both are equally good in and out of the faction. All right, maybe not equally good, but both of them synergize in and out of the faction. I like the idea that Dancing King essentially copies and pastes the good parts of any action onto any other card, so you can duplicate an effect essentially, or you can double destroy, or you can bring another card back to life, for example, or any of those sort of examples. And that doesn't have to be your own action either. That could be other people's actions. So what I really like about both of these cards is that they are both really unique in terms of how they work in that regard. And that's a massive tick in either box. To me, I don't actually mind which one of these wins. I'd be happy for both of them to win, or either one of them to win. And it's one of the first and very rare times that I can say that and genuinely mean it. I think again, when I was looking through the previews of what we decided on and what we were thinking about, I think all three of us rated both of these cards really, really highly within the factions. All three of us were talking about the benefits of both of these cards, I think, over the last week whilst we were putting this sort of thing together. So I was backing either of these, one of these two to get to the final and one of these two to win. I'm almost sad that they're against each other, because it would have been way easier to argue Dragon Warrior over literally anything else, or Dancing King over literally anything else. Yeah. So it is good that they're against each other in final, because I actually believe for one of the first times perhaps that both of the best cards are there for us to talk about. So I'm happy either way. Luke's done a pretty good job talking me around to Dragon Warrior. I think it's Mark's turn to talk me around to Dancing King now, and then maybe I'll be able to make the final decision.
I mean, I completely agree. This is the closest final we've had, because I think both of these cards should be the winner, and neither should be the loser.
What was the one we had where it was great? What was Great Worm playing? That was a really cool.
Odysseus. Yeah, but that was an injustice that was done to Odysseus, though. Really.
But that was close, though.
That was also very close. I think this one, for me, I thought Odysseus was far and away better than Great Worm, though. So for me, this one is much closer, because I don't really have a strong out and out favourite for this. I think on Dancing King, the disco dancers and Dancing King, it's less about how complex they are. I think they're victims of how the game has developed and how rules have mashed on top of each other, and they've had to really think about, as they brought in new expansions, they've had to really retroactively change rules and fix rules and all that sort of stuff, and it's become a great big complicated rules mess. And I think Disco Dancers coming in as late as they've done, they're a victim of that really than anything else. I think on a surface level, if you're playing Disco Dancers, it's quite straightforward. It's when you get into those niche cases and more more complex particular standard actions, but it can get very complicated, and I think that's more of a fault of the game than it is Disco Dancers. So it's hard to separate those two things, Disco Dancers and the rules. But I think if the game was redone again now and they had a chance to actually correct all the rules and start again with the rules, I think Disco Dancers would be a more straightforward faction, but they're just an unfortunate victim of the way the game has developed over time. So I think just for that point on Dancing King, but in general, my arguments for Dancing King would be that it's not like we talked about Archmage and Solar Shout playing an extra action every turn. Dancing King is like a pseudo Archmage, because you are playing an extra action every turn, but you're playing the same action twice. So if you're playing an augmentation for dinosaurs, for example, you're playing a second augmentation off the back of that augmentation. So it's like a pseudo Archmage, and it's not just an extra action every turn, it's a specific extra action twice, which I think is very strong. And it's not just an extra action for your own actions. Anyone else playing an action, you can also copy their effects as well. So if someone plays +1 power counter or play an extra whatever it might be, you can copy that effect. If someone destroys one of your minions, you can destroy one of their minions on that base, and it doesn't even need to meet the same conditionality clauses. So Dancing King is like a juiced up Archmage as well. Not just in its own faction, but loads of factions have standard actions. It's the most common type of action. So I think Dancing King certainly has its it's very big positives, and it can create situations where you can go from Dancing King plus one other minion and play an augmentation and get +8 power out of nowhere. You can get those crazy situations where you can double up everything. And I think the problem with Dancing King is that it's one of those minions that the base will break very quickly. It's one of those minions you want to keep in play for a long time to get maximum value out of doubling up all your actions, but you can't necessarily get that long-term value that you like. And I think for me, this is coming down to playstyle preference, because I love counter picks and things like that. And Dragon Warrior, anytime Luke picks, Mad Scientists, slam down the Kung Fu Fighters and get Dragon Warrior out and his big first mate, jacked up Syrian first mate, I'll just have all those power counters, please. And you can play your expert, it's the dream situation. Like Luke's got a 25 power first mate. I've got Dragon Warrior out. I play expert timing. I'll steal his power counters from first mate over to Dragon Warrior, and then I'll do something else. It is the perfect counter to certain factions, and I love counter picking. So things like Eliza is right up my, that's right in my wheelhouse, and Dragon Warrior is the same sort of thing. But it's not just that. It's the fact that you can use power in the most efficient way possible. So think about how many times you've broken bases where you've had more power than is needed, and Dragon Warrior makes it so that you can never overpay on bases. You can always pay the perfect amount and save any power that you don't need. So I think for me, it's an incredibly efficient play. It's great in the faction. It's great against certain specific factions. It's got general utility. Dancing King is also amazing. The fact that you can copy other people's actions as well as your own actions, it's like a 51-49 for me towards Dragon Warrior.
You two saying Dragon Warrior?
I think so. Just for it's right up in my wheelhouse, whereas Dancing King just isn't as much.
I'm absolutely happy with that. I think I still lean more towards Dancing King, but I'm not going to try and convince anybody otherwise. I don't even mind falling on my sword and taking the L. I honestly, I think both are great cards, and I'd be happy to have either within the faction. I haven't played a great deal of Kung Fu Fighters. It's probably why I don't have a great deal of affinity towards them. But I have played Disco Dancers, Dinosaurs, and it did work really well, and I did enjoy playing it. And I think ultimately, if it comes down to enjoyment of the game, I think I'm more inclined to enjoy the the Dancing King play. But again, I think Mark summarized this discussion particularly well for me when he said it comes down to a playstyle choice. And to me, my playstyle choice is more suited to a Dancing King than a power counter faction. So, but there's no begrudge in that, and I think Dragon Warrior is a fantastic card, fantastic play, deserved winner. But Dancing King would have been equally as good.
It's a shame they both can't go through, really.
We've had other cards go through that I don't think are as good as the loser that's in this faction.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this expansion is a very good. They're all really great factions. They're all at a very similar power level, and as you say, we've had discussions where either of these cards could have walked the final and won it. But it's just a shame that they had to go up against each other. But as you say, it comes down to playstyle. I'm sure there'll be people in there who watch this and think Dancing King should have out and out walked this, and there'll be some people who think that Dragon Warrior should have been the out and out winner.
I also slightly agree with them.
But
it is nice to be in a 50-50 where I'd have been happy either way.
Yeah.
And I'm pleased you didn't put them on the same side, because if we'd have had that in the semi as a discussion, nothing else on this board is even remotely as interesting as Dancing King or Dragon Warrior, as far as I'm concerned.
I think we had that with the one where the 70's expansion, where we had the semi-final was Critter Champion against There Goes Tokyo, and we spent like 20 minutes discussing that, because that was the final basically.
Yeah, and then There Goes Tokyo walked it.
Yeah, and then There Goes Tokyo walks the final. But
it was interesting that we put Dancing King as the 2 seed, though.
That's just because I like cards that say gain a VP, and last time said that.
Yeah. I wonder if we all had different ones and all put Dancing King at 2. I think that was what happened in this case, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think I put Disco Lewis first.
Yeah, you put Disco Lewis. What were you on?
That's a great card. Much better than Last Dance.
But yeah, we had a lot of rounds in this one where I could have gone either way, really. The expert timing and let's finish this one was another one that I think I could have been convinced either way. Stoneford, Last Dance. El Bandido is probably the truckers have probably come out worst in this in terms of.
It's hard though. The truckers are one of those sets of cards that are actually that they're much better than they look. I often find that the truckers are a really good set of cards to pair. That they're a really good support faction, a really, really good support faction.
Suspense.
Oh my goodness me! Quiet down now. Google shouted at me. I find that they're a really good a partner faction. They're a really good pair faction, and they let you activate some of the best qualities of some of the other factions. Really unlock things like killer plants that would otherwise be a bit stale. So that they do a really good job of that. I always find that the vigilantes have always got something to do, but I said before, you never really, or I always feel like whenever I've played them, I've never really had the ability to do what it is that I want to do at the time when I need to do it. I always get it a little bit late or a little bit early, and I never get a chance to finish this. I'd never played a great deal of Kung Fu Fighters, but I will. I will most definitely start playing some. They're another faction. When I was looking through them, I was thinking, my God, they've got some fantastic, like really, really good individual cards, and together they work exceptionally well. So I'll definitely be playing some more Kung Fu Fighters, and I'd have been happy with a Dancing King win, like I said before. I don't mind a complex faction as much as if we were playing with some more casual players, then yeah, perhaps I'd probably steer away from them. But we're playing with some people who've played a few games. I don't mind explaining a couple of extra bits.
I think you can mostly get away with it because Dancing King on the surface is quite straightforward, and you've got a card like Augmentation, give a minion +4 power. Dancing King will just copy that. It's when you start getting into more complex actions and things like that. But I think you can generally mostly just get away with Dancing King as being quite a simple card and avoid a lot of the complexities of it if you're playing looking like a casual game. Right, well, we'll wrap it up there then if we've got nothing else to add on that one. It was a very tough expansion, this one, the 70s expansion, but I think we've got a worthy winner and a worthy final.
It's nice, no drama. No drama today, just.
And Luke's got his first
nice.
ever. How does it feel, Luke? Your first ever win in the final?
Well done, mate.
Wasn't my first ever win.
Round of applause.
You remembered one when we were reminiscing. Great Worm was my pick over Odysseus.
Yeah, actually,
so I won that one.
I was surprised as well because Odysseus is your +1 power counter farm.
And
if we go back, I might change my mind. I might go Odysseus now. Just
Odysseus.
I like Odysseus.
Yeah,
that was another good final
conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll wrap it up there, and we'll see you all next time.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.